How is the war going between the United States and Iran? Is it going great? Is it going terrible? Well, that depends on who you ask because it depends on which side you're asking and which actor. You can get radically different answers. The question is, and we're trying to ascertain here, what is, as we always do, pierce through all the fog of war to the extent we can on day 5 of a war when we're limited to what is the imagery that is coming out, videos, satellite images, etc. And we're trying to figure out what is the ground truth here. We're going to put together as best we can today to give you an idea what's actually going on the ground, in part by showing you what some of the people on each side of this equation are saying and kind of interpreting some of it. Because unfortunately, on the major news media so far that I've seen, they'll put a soundbite on there and almost nobody asks any follow-up questions. And there's a couple in particular that here on the United States side that I have pulled up here that Gary and I are ready to show you that are significantly different in reality than what was said here. And without somebody like the Daniel Davis Deep Dive, without our show to give you the truth of the ground truth of what they're saying, you could go away thinking something very different in terms of what's actually happening here. Let's start off, first of all, because just moments ago, President Trump made another announcement and discussed a little bit about the war, and this is where some of the problems start.
And we're doing very well on the war front, to put it mildly, I would say. Somebody said, on a scale of 10, where would you rate it? I said about a 15. And we're going to continue to do well. We have the greatest military in the world by far. And that was a tremendous threat to us for many years. 47 years they've been killing our people and killing people from all over the world. And I think we have great support. And I think if we didn't do it first, they would have done it to Israel and give us a shot if that was possible. And if we didn't terminate the worst deal, one of the worst deals ever made, the Obama nuclear deal, I call it the Obama nuclear deal, where he gave everything to Iran, including a nuclear weapon. It was a road to a nuclear weapon. Bad things would have happened 4 years ago because they would have had a weapon 4 years ago if I didn't terminate that deal. So we're in a very strong position now.
That's good enough right there, Gary. Okay. Let's look at the first stuff he said here. He's kind of continuing on something with a lot of the war supporters in the United States are doing. They have to justify this some way. There is no question. It is painfully obvious, blatantly so, that this was a war of choice. Nothing was foisted upon us. Well, they can't have that. They can't just let it sit like that because that's causing problems with America. They've seen the polling. They understand that people are saying, yeah, hang on, we're like 59%. I think we're against this. After it started, not before, but since it started, 59 people are not for it. Well, they can't allow that to happen. They can't allow people that they're going to need to vote for them in the midterms to believe that. So now they're trotting out a lot of these new memes, a lot of these new messaging that put a justification on some of it. So he's doing the first part there by saying that, listen, it's the war's going great. So he loves to always say how things good are that he's associated with because everything he does works according to him. And he said it's a 15 out of a 10. So everything is going fantastic. It's going super good. No problem. Not sure how you say a 15 out of a 10 when there are 6 dead Americans and some other number of has not been released that are in critical condition in the hospital. Some others have been slightly wounded. Many of our bases have been hit. Some of our $1 billion radar that we know has been hit. Air defense missile batteries have been destroyed. So I'm not sure that qualifies as a 15 out of a 10. In terms of just how the war is going. Now, there's no question that there's been a whole lot of damage done to the Iranian side. There has been a lot of destruction there. A lot of people have been killed. Some are kids, but some are also adults. That they seem to be fine with, of course, all that. No one's really bothered by it. But the issue being, though, is that why did you do it? What was the imminent threat? Because that's the operative thing here. And I'm going to show you a couple of different things that folks in the United States have said, that trying to trot out to say that this is an imminent threat, and that's why we had to strike. Now, you recall a couple of days ago that Secretary of State Mark Rubio let slip that the Israelis were going to attack, and so the imminent threat in his discussion there was, well, that the Israelis were going to attack and then we would get counterattack from Iran. And so we had to act first. And that caused a lot of storm because people are saying, hang on, really? That's what it was? Because Israel was going to attack Iran and so we had to join with them? That was the imminency? Now they're going, no. That's not the case. That's not what the imminent threat was. The imminent threat was the bad guys, the Iranians. And in fact, Lindsey Graham can be counted on to throw as much shade as possible on the truth as he did here.
That's a ridiculous idea that there's no imminent threat from a regime who chants death to America since 1979. There's no imminent threat from a regime that sponsored Hezbollah, who killed 220 Marines and 18 sailors in 1983 in Lebanon. Go tell it to the families of the IED victims in Iraq and Afghanistan, sponsored by Iran, that this regime is no threat. You know, in 1939, out of 35, I don't know if Hitler was an imminent threat, but I wish somebody would have dealt with him. Any regime that embraces a cult of death, that's killed Americans, vows to kill Americans in the future, trying to build a nuclear weapon even after Midnight Hammer, trying to build weapons to hit America, is a imminent threat. And it doesn't have to be imminent to me, because you don't want it to be imminent.
Right.
The whole idea is for it not to be imminent, dumbass.
He loves it. He has just gotten so vulgar and guttural in his language. He's now really loving to toss out that whole dumbass thing. He thinks it's really cute. It used to be something like that from a United States senator would be a shame and something to be expelled, possibly even. Just, you know, how dare you? The Senate was supposed to be the upper chamber where that kind of decorum was just not accepted. But now it's funny. He gets a lot of media exposure. Of course, cameras in his face all the time. So he now loves to do it more. That's kind of an aside. But let's take a look at what he said. He's starting off, first of all, by saying, well, of course, there was an imminent threat. Naturally, there was. And then he lays out trying to justify it. By the end, he's saying, well, actually, there wasn't an imminent threat, but why wait for it to get there? So in the context of a 60-second soundbite, he first of all starts off by saying there was an imminent threat, tries to justify it, and then ends by saying, well, you know, now that I've talked it out, there really wasn't one, but why wait to it? So that by itself tells you that there is no reality to this whatsoever. And let's look at what he did say. So he said, look, this is like, the Nazis. So I can see into the future. And if we could have gone back before 1939 and we could have seen the Nazis and take action then we could have prevented all the things that happened here. Really? Do you think that's the case? So, I mean, first of all, that sounds good because you're like, wow, well, from this side of history, we know how that turned out. So, boy, it would have been great to go in ahead of time. But you have to look at it in the context of the time it happened. So you had, of course, World War I, where millions of people in Europe were already killed. And the last thing they wanted to do just 25 years later was to get back into another war. So they were doing everything they could to try and avoid one. The last thing they were ready to do then is to just leap into another conflict that they were not ready to fight at that time. Now, it's easy to say in history that now we could go back, but they didn't know at the time that was going to happen. And of course, we have the infamous, the Munich Agreement and appeasement and all that. And we know how that worked out. They didn't know that was going to work out at the time because there had been a long European tradition of appeasement. Didn't used to be a bad word because it avoided a lot of wars. And in the past, that kind of action had prevented more conflict. But of course, in that famous time that it didn't, Hitler ended up thinking that was going to be weakness on the part of the Europeans and took advantage of it. And everybody knows what happened after that. But now then, here we are in this context, and we're not 25 years away from another major war where we've lost a lot of people. In fact, we're probably so far away, it's a danger to us because we're near, around 80 years away from the end of World War II and the use of nuclear weapons. And for a long time, that animated people a lot to want to avoid another war. The bloodshed then, I want to say it was 25 million dead worldwide in World War I, and then it was around 60 million or so dead in World War II. So people for a long time were absolutely adamant about wanting to avoid war. All those people have primarily died off. And now then we have a lot of people in positions of power now who don't know anything about war, has never been a part of it, and certainly not any that cost anybody anything. And all the things we've done since then are like cost-free. And so you can do stuff like the Operation Midnight Hammer. You can do stuff like destroying the boats. You can do things like trying to attack the Houthis, or not trying to, attacking the Houthis, trying to get them to stop doing something until you get bored with it, and then move on to something else. And then you can take over another country in Venezuela. You can take their oil. You can take and capture, kill a bunch of people, taking their head of state. And then there's no consequence to any of it domestically. Everybody just keeps doing whatever they want to do. And now you have a situation to where Lindsey Graham in particular, he's not the only one, but he's kind of the leader on this that loves talking about death and killing people and destroying things. So now then he loves to do that. And now he'll just start lying. The second part of this video, he is just lying out his butt. There is no truth to this. So he says, why should you wait for this threat to materialize on somebody that's killed all these Americans? Okay, so there have been Americans killed from Iran. Not going to say that there wasn't. But the context is kind of important, and he always leaves that part out, as do all of his comrades. They always talk about what the Iranians have done, and they never, and you'll see this in a video I'm going to show in a second, they never talk about what preceded that. They never talk about how many Iranians we have killed, how many strikes we have done, how many attacks we have made, to which they respond, how many attacks our ally Israel has made, how many Iranians they have assassinated, killed, blown up, and other equipment that they have destroyed, embassies they have attacked in other countries, etc. Never mentions any of that. So the implication being, hey, this is just this murderous regime. It's like a little Hitler. Yeah, it's not a big one, but it's a little. So he's just like Hitler. That's the reason he used that analogy, because he knows that that's something that resonates with Americans. And then he gives this alleged list of things that they have done and says, you can't trust these guys, and they're just like Hitler, so you got to go after them. And so people go, oh, okay, cool. That's his intention anyway. One of the other things he says, listen, all in this Operation Midnight Hammer. I mean, we tried to teach them a lesson before, and they didn't learn it. Well, they did learn a lesson before. They didn't have a nuclear program. There was no nuclear program. You blew up enrichment facilities and nuclear study, research facilities, etc. That's what you blew up there. There was no weapons program. They had capability, could have gone to a weapon later, but it never had. So they had the capability, but they kept inspectors in to monitor it, to make sure it never went to a weapons program. So we had that. And then he says, look, we got out of this nuclear weapons program. That's the same thing, actually, President Trump said, the first one. He's saying we got out of the JCPOA, and they would have had a bomb, President Trump said, in just, 4 years ago. They would have had a bomb. And, of course, that is irrational and illogical as you can get. The JCPOA is what put constraints on the Iranian side that prevented them from having a nuclear weapon, prevented them from even making bombs, or even making a lot of the process to get close to the bomb. If you had gone anywhere down that path, you had inspectors and you had snapback sanctions. You had all kinds of things to prevent that from happening. Didn't talk about the long-range missiles. That was outside of the scope of it. It had a sunset clause in 2015, at which time it would have rolled over into a new one. You could have adopted it, or maybe it would have come to an end. At that time, then you could have talked about some problems. But instead, President Trump got out of it. And it is the weirdest mental gymnastics even imaginable for the President of the United States and people like Lindsey Graham to say, thank God we got out of that. Otherwise, they would have had a bomb. That it's totally irrational and illogical. And yet it's said with such conviction that people are starting to believe it. So his contention, follow me here, is that by getting out of a deal that puts severe constraints and international inspectors inside, people who were experts at nuclear weapons and nuclear power, that was in place that would have prevented them from doing almost anything. And you got out of it, which opened the doors for them then to start ramping that capability up. And somehow you claim if you hadn't gotten out of it, i.e., if you hadn't removed the constraints, that somehow they would have had a bomb. That's as irrational as it could get, because the thing wouldn't have even expired until 2025, last year, at which time they would have been at 3.67%. Even if they had gotten out of it, they would have been down at that point. Then you could have dealt with it. Remember, even after Trump pulled out of it, it was still a couple of years before they started accelerating the reprocessing positions and the amounts, and building up their stockpile of reprocessed material, eventually getting up to 60%. Now they have 400 some odd kilograms of it. None of that stuff would have happened at all had we stayed in it. And yet he's just saying the opposite. It's like saying, listen, I wouldn't have gained 20 pounds if I had starved myself to death. It's a good thing I didn't. I mean, no, if you starve yourself, you're going to lose weight. And he's saying that I gained weight because I starved myself. It's that kind of juxtaposition, contradiction, irrationality. But he says it with such conviction that people go, maybe that's right. Well, somebody else who seems to have drank that Kool-Aid was also on television to try it also and make the case here. And it's just as irrational as anything else. And that is a senior Republican. I think he's on one of the intelligence committees in the House of Representatives, Brian Mast.
So let's start recent and work our way back. Obviously, there is what has gone on just in the last couple of weeks with our negotiations that were ongoing in Oman, in Geneva, with Oman, in Geneva, with others, and the desire to say no nukes, no missiles, no proxies. And where that conversation was going, which I can't speak to you about where everything in that conversation was going, other than to say it led us to believe that there was the potential for a strike. That would be one example. You go beyond that and you look at the U.S. aircraft that had been knocked off the decks of our carriers because of the drones and ballistic missiles that Iran or their proxies had fired directly at our Navy vessels. You look at their harassment of our merchant marine vessels as an ongoing threat. You look a year and a half ago at their killing of 3 U.S. service members in Jordan at a place called Tower 22, that being Sergeant Moffett, Sergeant Sanders, Sergeant Rivers. And the list of these continual threats go on.
Yeah, that's enough right there, Gary. So all this was the specific question that was asked of him was, why was there an imminent threat? And he said, well, I'll give you some examples. And again, it just manufactures them. I mean, it would be a bad movie because it was so illogical. Remember, for a movie to be good, it's got to be plausible. And you can create fiction all day long. It works all the time, but it's got to be plausible to be a good movie. This is a bad movie script because it's not plausible, but it is definitely fiction. And let's start at the beginning. He literally says, as irrational as what President Trump said about getting out of the nuclear agreement somehow would have resulted in a bomb, the absence of logic there, he's missed the same thing here. He said the imminent threat was that they were the Iranians did not agree to all the terms that we said in our negotiations. And the terms he asked for in negotiations with Steve Witkoff through President Trump was complete surrender. You will get rid of your nuclear program. You will get rid of your long-range missiles. You will stop supporting any of the proxies in the region. And by the way, your Navy, got to get rid of that too, and your Air Force and your long-range missiles, especially all that. All we ask is for everything, and we gave nothing in return. And I don't know, somehow they didn't do it. So that equals an imminent threat. All that says is that you're not going to surrender. And even then, it's a double lie, because actually the Iranians were willing to go much farther than they ever had before at that third and final negotiation. They actually said they would put the reprocessing, they would go to zero reprocessing. They would take that 400 kilograms and get rid of it too. Two major issues without which there couldn't be a nuclear bomb. The whole thing could have been set there. If this was really about nuclear enrichment and the potential to get a nuclear bomb, that was it. It was on a golden platter right there. It was gone. That's what you got to understand. That what the Omani foreign minister announced on CBS News on Friday evening. He said, yes, they're willing to do those things, and they're willing to discuss some of the other stuff later on after this gets resolved here. Absolutely. If that was actually your operandus modi, that's what your objective was. It was guaranteed, sitting on a golden platter. And yet we know for sure that the president gave the order, according to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane. He gave the order to attack the next day at 3:30 p.m. after the Iranian side had agreed to that the night before. So he took the golden bowl and he threw it into the toilet. That's what he did, because he was not interested. That was not really the reason. It was because there's all kinds of theories about what it could have been. We know for sure it's something that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been begging Trump to do, has been begging the Americans to do for a long time. He finally got his wish. That's the truth, but President Trump can't say that. The Republicans can't say that, so they keep making stuff up, and there's no truth in it. But there's more. Let me continue going down there. He said some other stuff. He said that's one example, so that one's weird. The next example was he said our aircraft were thrown off of our decks of our ship, and that's Iran's fault. That equals an imminent threat. Remember, that's what the context is here. He's given examples of the imminent threat. Okay. Why did those aircraft fall off the Navy decks? First of all, that was a terrible dereliction of duty, nearly, that you're not taking care of your aircraft and you didn't have it tied down. You weren't following your protocol. I mean, that's a big issue right there. Now, the rumor is that the ship was having to maneuver to get away from incoming Houthi missiles, not Iranian missiles, but Houthi-fired missiles, because we had chosen to interdict the issue in the Red Sea and said because the Houthis were trying to shut down traffic to Israel in association with their Palestinian brothers in the area, and they said that we're going to shut down traffic to Israel through the Red Sea until you stop attacking the Palestinians. That was the deal. We didn't like that, so we said we're going to go in and we're going to bomb the hell out of you, and we're going to blow you up, and we're going to kill everybody that gets in our way. So we sent aircraft carrier strike group into the Red Sea to start knocking the hell out of the Houthis, as we claimed. And in the process of doing that, they start firing back. And there was at least one of those occasions where the reports anyway were that there was incoming missiles coming in from the Houthis, and the ship had to maneuver just as an aircraft came on board, and they didn't have it locked down, and it fell into the sea, literally fell off the deck. And then you had a similar experience. Another one fell off too. That one was under a little bit more uncertain reasons why. But those were only because we chose to fight the Houthis in the Red Sea because we didn't like what they were doing. Had nothing to do with Iran, had everything to do with the Houthis, had everything to do with the Israeli attack into Gaza and the destruction of their people. But yet he's telling you that's what Iran was doing, like Iran was pulling all the levers here, like they fired the missiles. They didn't fire the missiles. It was the Houthis. That's who we were there to fight. But he can't be honest about anything. Then the next thing he said, they were harassing our merchant ships. There was some truth to that because that's what they were in the Red Sea to try to prevent. So I'll give him that one thing there. That is, but again, that's the Houthis. It's the Houthis, not Iran. It's Houthis. So I guess I don't give him that either. The other thing he said, which really got me agitated, was he said the 3 troops that were killed on Tower 22 in late 2023. Now, that also was because Israel attacked into the Hamas and started killing a lot of the Palestinian people, the civilians. And that is when a lot of the people in the region, which I had been warning about since 2019, our troops that were scattered throughout there, especially those in Syria, and this was just over the border from Syria into Jordan, where Tower 22 was. I said, look, if anything happens, you put our troops in close proximity, so even a drone or some of these Katyusha rockets could kill of our troops. And they're there for no value. They're literally just targets sitting in the desert. I've been warning about this since at least 2019. And then it happened in 2023. And so he again says that was Iran. No, it was some of the Shia militia in Iraq and in Syria. And they took under fire our troops there in solidarity with the Palestinians who the Israelis were attacking. The only reason that they were attacking is because the Israeli soldiers were firing on the civilians in the Gaza Strip. That's the only reason they did that. That's the only reason the Houthis were shutting down traffic in the Red Sea. The only reason these people were going after our troops because they were there. And they said, if you're going after, if the Israelis and Americans with American bombs are killing all these people in the Gaza Strip, then we're going to kill your people too. And there had been a lot of attacks, but none of them had worked until that one. So again, just like the other examples, only because we inserted ourselves into this fight did we get a retaliation. And this is a long-standing major American problem that all these people who are pro-warlusters, and some of them are Democrats too, because Joe Biden did a lot of this stuff so before Trump came in there. So there's a lot of blame to go around. But all of these have this in common in that we insert ourselves into actions. We do things because we don't like something or we want something to happen, and we don't want there to be any consequences. We don't want there to be any counteractions, no responses, and anybody, how dare they do? And then we will lie, and when we'll justify doing more stuff later on by just citing the action without talking about the context or why we were there or why they were acting, because the implication being they're just wicked and evil. That's all they do. They're just sitting around and twiddling their fingers thinking, how can we be evil today? And how many Americans can we kill? That's kind of what that's the implication. I mean, it's a comic relief a little bit. It's a mockery, because that's what it is. That's what they're doing. And you see it just playing out all over the place. Well, that's the justification that the United States has given. So it's obviously a bunch of nonsense. We know that they're at least a good portion of the truth. It's because Israel wanted it. And now then we're paying the price. So we've already lost 6 people killed in action because we joined this fight by our choice, and they just can't admit it. Well, they're not the only ones that are involved here. This has, because whether we want to or not, this does have consequences. It does have counteractions. Let's go to, let's stay with the United States for one more, though. This morning, Secretary of Defense Hegseth and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane, we're talking about how the war is going so far in the 4th day, I think into the 5th day now. And he said, you know what, this is really, really moving on, so successful. And let me tell you how. Here's what he said.
As a result of this, CENTCOM is now shifting in day 4 already from large deliberate strike packages using standoff munitions at range outside an enemy's ability to shoot at us, now into stand-in precision strikes overhead Iran. As the Secretary said, this is a point of munitions transition from standoff munitions to stand-in munitions like Joint Direct Attack munitions, which are GPS-aided free-fall weapons.
So, according to Secretary Hegseth and General Kane, everything's going great. They're toast, is what Secretary Hegseth said. We are winning. Everything is going our way. And then now you see the general saying, in fact, they're going so much our way. We started off with these standoff weapons where you fire at a distance where you're not even in range of air defense or anything else, and you can fire them in. Those are like your Tomahawk cruise missiles. By one report I saw, there were over 400 of them had been launched. I don't have a number of how many air interceptor missiles, but a lot of them, because of the retaliation from the Iranian side in both Israel, the United States, and then of our bases throughout the region, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, etc. So all of that, this is chewing up a huge amount of interceptor missiles. And now, though, he says, don't worry, this shows how successful we are. Now then, from the standoff range, we're going to the stand-in range. And so now then we're going to start flying more and more over the country of Iran. Secretary Hegseth in that same conference talked about how, now then we'll fly anywhere we want, anytime. And the Iranians in Tehran, all they'll have to do, he famously just looked up and said, yep, you'll see airplanes there, and there's nothing you can do about it. We'll see. We'll see if that's the case. We'll see if we can do it. I have doubts that we are, in these few days, have completely destroyed the air defense, but there's a lot of firepower going in there. What we don't know is, are those the cruise missiles? Are those stand-in attacks? We don't really know yet. But we'll see. But whatever they are, there is definitely a lot of firepower going. There's no question we have destroyed a lot of things and killed a lot of people and caused tremendous amounts of damage inside of Iran. Now, they also have caused a lot of damage around the region, inside Israel, and of course our own bases have suffered tremendous amounts of casualties. But one of the implications of all this is that everything is going great and you can expect that we're going to win. Well, now, if you ask the Iranian people and some of those who are on the Iranian side, they have a rather different interpretation of things. In their mind, they are the absolute victim in all this, and the United States and Israel are the absolute aggressors. They have a very different telling on this. As one of the guests that we've had on our show before from the University of Tehran, and Professor Morandi said yesterday.
Iranian missile and drone bases are all deep underground and inaccessible to the United States and the Israeli regime. And that's why they take revenge on ordinary Iranians. They've been bombing Tehran and other cities, destroying homes, destroying hospitals, destroying schools, slaughtering children. In one instance, they murdered 165 girls, young girls, at an elementary school who they've been buried today. So since they cannot defeat the Iranian military, they take their revenge on ordinary Iranians.
So he again repeated this, and you've seen, Gary has shown this many times here, the underground bunkers, the underground missile cities that Iran's talked about, that he was talking, they're all still there. We don't have any reports. I've not even seen a report or a claim that the United States and Israel have destroyed all these underground bunkers. I haven't seen a report that they've destroyed any of them. All I've seen so far, and they've shown video, are things that are on the surface. Some missile launchers, mobile missile launchers that we've seen on the surface. We've seen some helicopters. We saw what looked to be some large drones that looked like they were getting ready to take off. Those have been knocked out. There's also been some, and we have shown these on here. They don't show them very often. They've taken them down when they came up, but sometimes it's even our own released video shows that us attacking a painting on the ground that is a dummy and a decoy. And we claim that we've knocked that out, but it turns out it was just painting on the ground. They don't repeat those very often, but because you're watching here, we do. We also see this is one of the examples from those underground bases, and you literally see coming out of the dirt. Nobody has any idea where those are. You can't target that because until you see the missile fly off, you have no idea where it's at. And of course, to then come back and try to target this after it, it's a nearly impossible task. Literally just out of the dust. It's pretty remarkable technology. I've never seen it done before. So this is one of the unique things that the Iranian side has done. I'm sure we'll try to find some counter to it, but that just shows you the scale of the problem. So when you hear Secretary Hegseth and when you hear General Kane say, "Don't worry, we've got this all taken care of, everything's squared up," how are you going to get that squared up when you can't even hit these bases here? You don't even know where they are. And all of those underground bunkers that we just showed you, the miles of them, haven't even been hit. So I'm not sure what the plan is there. It's clear from the Iranian side that their plan is to continue causing as much damage as they can on the region here to keep the pain going in, keep us having to fire, especially these interceptor missiles, because that's the real key here. As President Trump said, and I think it was repeated in his press conference today, we do have a lot of the stand-in missiles that he says. So if you have really gotten rid of the air defense threat, and again, we'll see if that's the case, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt on that one. Let's say that they have, because we actually are pretty good at that and have been for decades. Then you can fire a whole bunch of those JDAMs and other kinds of gravity bombs. We probably have no shortage of those. You probably can be pummeling a lot of stuff, but that's not going to get you underground. And if the Iranian side is able to continue firing these missiles against all the regional targets, those things are going to continue on. Now, one of the other things that was mentioned there was in the press conference as an example of our success is they claimed that the number of missiles from the first day has gone down by 75%. Jack Keane, in fact, let me actually, I think I may have forgotten that here. Let me show you. This is what Jack Keane, because he's all excited too, talking about how the war is going. Listen to this.
You know, we have on the battlefield here the two most proven militaries in the world today. They have the most experience, and for the first time ever, they are working on a combined operation that has common goals together. And nobody can stand up to that. And certainly not the Iranians, who are already in a weakened condition. So let's take an example, ballistic missiles. That was the major conventional system that they have, and something that we were both very concerned about, the United States and Israel. And on day one, we did massive attacks on that. So much so that it reduced their ability to retaliate. Remember, on day one, they were saying, weakened response, Israelis and the CENTCOM people as well. And then our ambition is that by day 3, we would reduce their ability to retaliate and conduct attacks against U.S. bases and the Israelis by 75%. That is exactly retaliation diminishment that we achieved on day 3.
So let's, again, give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that some of that diminution of the reduction in the amount of fire was because we have been attacking them. There's no question that some of these videos, because I've seen them, are legit, that we did take out mobile launchers. We have taken out some of their air assets. We've taken out a lot of stuff. We've hit command and control centers, et cetera. So there's a good chance that a lot of that is because of the hitting assets, but only a portion of it. Now, remember, we were telling you about it in the weeks before this attack happened, in the months actually, is that there was a very clearly articulated plan by the Iranian side that in the event of a cut off of their headquarters, in the event of a decapitation strike, that they had a plan, and that these people at the command centers all over the country would immediately execute. If they lost contact, they had a target list and a sequence of things that they would fire, and so that's what they did. And we saw that's exactly what happened. There was a cutoff of communications. That dead hand system, so to speak, went into effect, and so there was missiles flying out all over the place. They said that was the Ayatollah's approved plan before the conflict had began. So even though he was killed in some of the first strikes, he was able to lead the charge there because of his plans that already existed. So everybody executed those. Now then that they have apparently resuscitated some degree of their command and control systems, now they have control back again. Now people are starting to wait for orders, and they're taking counsel of what they're doing and trying to figure out. They're trying to get a new Ayatollah. That first one was hit apparently, so they're kind of getting their bearings back before. But you see all those underground tunnels and all that I've not even seen any reports of any of those being hit. So the likelihood is that after the initial response, now then they're back to, all right, let's make positive decisions here about what we're going to do there. But they also would have to have said, all right, we're going to maintain a certain density of firing. So they want to maintain their viability, and they want to keep on sucking down air defense missiles. So you probably will still see drones. You'll probably still see ballistic missiles, but they probably won't have them in any kind of big barrages like we saw in the first place, like we saw a lot during the 12-day war, until they perceive a benefit to do so. So that could literally come at any time. We could see where they just all of a sudden start launching wave after wave of a combination of drones, and then followed by ballistic missiles, and then maybe more drones. And they may do it in a targeted area. They may go after something really big by sucking down all of our air defense missiles, and then after they have saturated it with a lot of combination of different kind of assets, then all of a sudden they come in with another wave, and we don't have anything to defend ourselves with. So we're not out of the woods yet. So it's a little too early to start popping corks on champagne or saying they're on their last legs, which is what many of the people in the United States are saying. Because all the evidence says that probably what Professor Morandi was talking about is that they are still perfectly viable. They knew they were going to lose a lot of their ships. They knew there was nothing they could do to protect them. They knew that they were going to lose a lot of their aircraft. Some of them are in bunkers. Some of them are in underground facilities. So you can imagine they still have some, but it's going to be really hard for them to use it. Just like it was hard for the Ukraine side to use their air assets. They had a lot of them, but they were negligible because Russia had the ability to shoot them down. We have the ability to shoot them down as well. So they may not play much of a role if they still have them. But those missiles, there's almost nothing you can do about the missiles and the drones. So there is the likelihood that there are tens of thousands of those things, and that they can operate like this for a long time. And listen, this idea, this hope that, we have pounded them, and just mercilessly, and we'll keep doing it. And now, we're in the stand-in range, as General Kane said. And so now we're going to start using JDAMs and a bunch of other munitions, which we have a lot of. And there's truth to that. We do have a lot more of those, because we haven't used those in large percentages, even in the Russia-Ukraine war. Those are not something we gave in large measure. We probably do have a lot of those. So they can still keep firing above ground. But as I have said before, looking through history, there's very, very few examples to where a population and a government and a military is succumbed only by air. It's very rare indeed. The most likely outcome, and it's what we have seen in the last century or so, the vast majority of times people are attempting to be bombed into the Stone Age, is that they suck it down, and it gives them more resilience, and it gives them this galvanizing effect that they're going to pull together, and that they're going to suffer a lot of things, and that they're not going to give up. And especially when they have the wherewithal and the capability of continuing to fire back from the middle of the desert somewhere, no one knows where it is or how many of these things there are, and they can start firing at will from some of these places. There's no reason to think that you're going to be able to knock those out, because you don't even know where to shoot. Now, when they see something come up, maybe they can vector somebody over there, but you can see once those missiles went up and the dust cleared away, you still only have dirt. So I don't know what your target is going to be. I don't know where you're going to put that reticle, because you're not going to be able to find it once the dust has settled out. So even that's going to be difficult, much less however many they may have you don't know about. So all I'm trying to tell you is don't think that Iran is going to fall in the next few days or even the next 2 or 3 weeks, because all evidence shows that they have everything they need to sustain this for a long time. So when you hear all these comments about, yeah, there was an imminent threat that they were going to attack us, just understand that's complete hogwash. They were not going to attack anyone. They never had before. Never. The state of Iran had never attacked any country. Even when you're talking about some of these proxies, those are retaliations, those are response, and those are some of the tentacles, as Naftali Bennett used to call them. But the country of Iran itself never attacked anybody. So the idea that the country of Iran was ready to attack us is nonsense. It's a lie. No truth to it whatsoever. And that all these other things we like to say and we're pointing to as justification for it are mostly also lies or inaccurate and incomplete information, as I've just shown to you here. I've given you the context that they failed to give, that the media, the mainstream media refuses to even ask the questions, much less provide the background. They just allow the conversation to stand. And so a lot of people who aren't watching shows like this, they'll believe it. But there are fewer and fewer people who even watch that just because it doesn't pass the common sense test. That's a fact too. There's a reason why our channel is starting to be so successful right now and getting huge numbers of views, because people recognize they're sick and tired of being manipulated on mainstream media. They're tired of it. It's not passing the common sense test. And when people make these absurd claims like what President Trump did there or what Representative Mass did, people aren't buying it because it doesn't even make sense what you're saying. Lindsey Graham, of course, has lost credibility a long time ago. He's just a clown, but the camera loves him. He gets ratings, so that's all people care about. But he is not a serious statesman. He is not doing anything to help the United States. He is doing everything he can to help not even the state of Israel, but the wishes and the lust and the desire of one man, Benjamin Netanyahu, over the interest of the United States, over the interest of even the Israeli people, and with no consideration whatsoever to the people that get killed on the other side. He actually loves to kill people. He loves it. He's always talking about that, doesn't even want to have anything to do with diplomacy. He's always for whatever's the next war here. And there's a lot of people falling behind that. But it's not going to work out good for us, folks. It's very unlikely that we're going to get success here. We'll continue to monitor this for you and continue to give you all the news as it breaks, and anything else that happens, you can count on us being on top of it here. We really appreciate you. We will look very much forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive. You know, we don't have sponsors because we hate to hit you over the head with ads. I don't like them. So show a little love back. Subscribe, like, and send this to somebody you care about.